is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker, and I'm your host. Today, I'm excited because we talk a lot about how to work smarter, and, we don't necessarily make it clear that there are different types of personalities and different ways that people want to approach their time management and what makes somebody productive. And so today I'm excited to talk about productivity for creators, time management, and how to create balance for those people who are more the creative thinkers than the structured thinkers. So I'm excited to have Wayne Mullins with us. He's the super expert in this area as he's super creative and has learned a few things along the way. He's founder and CEO of the Ugly Mug Marketing. He's worked with and inspired and motivated clients from over 100 industries, and his work has directly influenced more than 100,000 entrepreneurs. Through his books, his training programs, Wayne influences more than 250,000 entrepreneurs a year. Welcome, Wayne. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Penny. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. So let's start out and just understand, was time management and productivity an issue for you as a creative? And so that's why you worked to find solutions?
Well, Penny, to be honest with you, it kind of started way back in the day with this planner that I got from this gentleman of the name Zig Ziglar. I don't remember the name of his planner, but he always talked about Zig in his CDs, which is what I got back in the day. He always talked about the importance of scheduling your time and assigning your priorities to your calendar. And to be honest with you, Penny, for years, I would order his planner, and I had the greatest intentions every year of using that thing and maximizing my life and my time. And like so many people, at least I hope so many other people can relate to, I would fill out a few pages, a few weeks would go by, and then it would get more sporadic and more sporadic. And so usually by the time, March, April, May rolled around, there was pretty much nothing going in this wonderful planner that I'd spent, $50 on or whatever it was. Can you relate to that, Penny? Does that sound...
Totally. I can relate to that. And, in different ways. I've had so many different tools that people have given me that I had all good intention to use them. I just couldn't use them for whatever reason. It just didn't feel like a fit. It just didn't. So I think that a lot of people can relate to that, whether they're creatives or not. It's just that there are some great tools that just aren't working for them. So tell
absolutely.
us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the beginning of my journey. But what happened along the way was I kept getting frustrated with myself because I couldn't seem to fit my style, my personality style into this planner that Zig Ziglar had created. And so that really began an experimentation process of me trying different things, seeing what didn't work. And I would go from extremes. I went from trying to use his planner, which was, scheduling out your weeks and your months in advance, to really not doing anything other than identifying priorities and then just letting happen what would happen, so to speak. And over the years, this process, I began refining and refining. And what I discovered was that someone who is a creative, so identifies, with big ideas, big picture things, they don't like details, which I'm in that category. The assumption is that we don't want boundaries or we don't want parameters around our time because that quote unquote stifles us, right? It stifles the creativity. And what I found to be true is that when we don't give ourselves some form of boundaries with our time, that we become less productive as creatives. So I'm speaking specifically as someone who's more of a big picture person. And the analogy I like...
Hold on, let me just interrupt you for 1 second there. I think that's true for everyone. Back in the day when Henry Ford was working on time management for, the assembly line, they went to 50, 55 hours, and they found when they extended the day and the time that people were working, that actually it was less effective. So they went back to the 40-hour work week. So I think that boundaries are important for everyone. I do want to hear what specific boundaries and how they work for creatives, but I do think that that's one of the things that people across all different personality types struggle with, is they fail to set some of their own boundaries, whether those boundaries are deadlines or start of the day, end of the day, or whatever they are. They can be different things for different people. So anyway, carry on. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the creative standpoint, though, is we tell ourselves a story. And that story is that those boundaries, those parameters around our creative time, the time we give ourselves to do these creative things, that stifles us. And the opposite is true. So if you think of a painter with a canvas, the canvas doesn't necessarily stifle them and their creativity, right? Instead, it enhances their creativity because it gives them the boundaries. It gives them the parameters within the area to work. And the same is true of our lives. The same is true for creatives. A lot of what we do from a company perspective, we have a lot of creative people on our team. And when we set those guidelines, when we set the parameters around the creative time, we are actually more creative than when we just have open-ended, take as much time as you want to come up with the ideas or the solutions to these problems.
What does it look like for you? So does that look like blocking a segment in your calendar for creating? Does it look like start and end of your day and leaving your day open? Like, what do your boundaries look like in that context?
So I've experimented a lot. I use time blocking. That's the way I set my schedule. That's the way I set my agenda. I really work in kind of three different ways. One would be kind of with my natural rhythm, the rhythm of my body when I have energy. There's a word for that, circadian. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that circadian rhythm? Yeah. And so I've learned over time when I'm able to do my best creative work, when I'm the most creative. And so what I make sure to do is schedule to block that time when it aligns with my natural energy levels, natural creative thought process. The other thing I love to do is theme my days. So even within keeping the time blocking, I love to theme certain days. So certain days of the week are themed for various activities. And towards the end of the week, as I know that my mental capacity will have dwindled, my ability to come up with creative ideas, creative solutions will wane over the course of that week. And so I try to avoid scheduling things that need a lot of creative thought towards the end of the week. So for me, it's a mixture of both time management and energy management. It's kind of that mix of where those two things intersect.
Right. Well, you must have read my book then, right? I mean, I talk a lot about energy management in that understanding our body's energy, but also being able to control and direct our energy. So I'm a big fan of it's how we show up for our time and understanding at what times are the best to do different things. So I totally can relate to that. And again, I would say this isn't just for creatives, right? This is how you implement it for your creativeness. But I want everybody else who's not necessarily considering themselves in that bucket to see that time blocking is good for everyone. And we all have times where we have more energy, where it's better to do something that requires more thinking when you have the highest level of energy. So that makes a lot of sense. And themed days just help us to keep that overall focus. So if we have any extra space, then we're going to use what's on the theme. So if you're doing a cold calling day and you're a salesperson, then you know if you've got a little space, you can make another call, right? So I think that's universally, these are really top time management practices for sure.
Sure. One other, just if we kind of take a microscope and look a little closer at what a day may look like, one of the things that I also do is I work in 50-minute blocks. So 50 minutes and then a 10-minute break. Now, that break in our office, what we actually do is we work in the same rhythm. So we work for 50 minutes distraction free. So that means if you have a question for your coworker, you're not allowed to get up and go ask that coworker a question. Obviously, if it's an emergency, and we're very clear about what emergencies are, because often what we think are emergencies aren't actually emergencies. And what that does, and here we are in a creative space, right? A marketing, advertising space where collaboration is key, collaboration is important. We still restrict when distractions take place. We have to do that because we know that deep work, as Cal Newport would call it, is required to produce the results that we want for our clients. So I would encourage people, even when you look at your time blocks or even when you look at your themed days, to reward yourself. So if you have a big time block of really mentally heavy activity that you're going to be working on, reward yourself with your next time block with something you enjoy, something that's easy on the mind. And the same thing with your themed days. So for me, I don't like digging into financials. I don't like the details of financials, going through financials. So always make sure that I have an easier day scheduled after that, that when I'm going to spend my theme day on financials, that the next day I'm not doing something that's very mentally taxing for myself.
Got it. Got it. I love it. I want to highlight some of the things that you said that I think are really important for entrepreneurs who are running a business with other staff members, or even managing up for those of you who could bring this idea to your department or your head of your company, is you as a company have taken responsibility to set some structures in place to help everybody to be more productive. And I do not find that enough in organizations. So you said two things that really struck me that I have not really heard before anybody share on the show is you set your whole team in certain rhythms. That's really powerful because that means that everybody is focusing at the same time. So you don't have those got-a-minute meetings at the wrong times, because people take a break and then they make it everyone else's break when it's not. Like, hey, let me come up and just tell you what I did this weekend. Or so I love that you're bringing that from top down to help them to put that structure in place. And I want to ask you about your defining emergencies. That's another thing that not many companies do, is to help to define what would be okay to interrupt me or one of your colleagues. How do you define that? I think that that process could be really beneficial to some other people who are listening.
Sure. So one thing that I would say is that for most of us, in the entrepreneurial space, business owners, we believe often kind of by default that almost everything's an emergency, right? Every time a potential sale calls in, it's like an emergency because I really can't afford not to talk to that person. Or every time somebody calls on something that I've been waiting to hear back from them on, it's an emergency, please. And the reality is rarely are those things emergencies. So for us, the way we define emergencies is simply this. So one of the functions of what we do is websites. We build websites. And so if a client calls and says their website is down, that's an emergency. So that's a very specific thing. The other thing that would constitute an emergency is if one of the people in our office is expecting a call and they really need to speak with someone, they will let the person know who's answering the phone. If this person calls, please come distract me. Please come let me know because it is urgent. It's important that I speak with that person. And the thing that I would say is this. Most people are going to get hung up because I know for years I was hung up on, like, what if we miss things? What if we miss an important call? What if we lose an opportunity?
Thing people are concerned with.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust me, I get that. But I always use the analogy of, let's say that, God forbid, I was diagnosed with something that was very life-threatening. So a disease that was life-threatening. Now, I could make an appointment with a doctor here in my town and go see that doctor early next week, right? Or I could attempt to get an appointment with a specialist, one of the top guys in the country, top gals in the country who specializes in this, but they can't see me for 3 months. So the question is, do I disrespect or do I respect the world-class expert less because I can't see that person for 3 months? Or do I respect them more because they're so booked up that they can't see me for 3 months? And so it's this scarcity mindset.
Depends on how urgent your illness is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we get into that scarcity mindset that if I don't answer their call, and we're talking for us 50-minute blocks. So if someone can't wait 50 minutes for us to make that connection with them, then that may be an indication that, one, we haven't been running other parts of our business well, right? That we're desperate to have to quote unquote get a sale. Or two, that person may be extremely needy and not the right type of client for us. And again, I'm painting with a very broad brush here, so that's not an absolute by any stretch. But what I would encourage people listening to do is just to get started. Like, you don't have to set these in stone. Treat this as an experiment. Like, here's how we're going to experiment. Here are the emergencies we're going to start with. Let's just give it a try and see what happens.
I like it. And what I've also heard, I think is very smart, is to take those defined urgencies and create specific channels for different types of communication. I don't know. Do you do that where all emergencies are communicated over one channel? So for instance, if the whole group does chat over Slack, that maybe Skype is the emergency channel or something like that, so that people know that when I get a message on this platform or in this way, it comes to my cell phone, it's got a ticker 911 or something like that, that helps them to understand that it's an emergency.
We don't necessarily. It would be personal. So it would be personal. So the person answering or taking that emergency call would come get the person. So we're back in office together as a team. It would be a direct text message if the person's not in office. So we would text them directly saying this person called, they need to speak with you. One thing that I think is important, and you kind of mentioned Slack or Skype, And, we use GChat from time to time. There's all these wonderful tools that make so much of what we do easier and more convenient. But if we're not careful, all of those tools are masters at becoming distractions for us.
Absolutely.
And so even in our 50-minute block, that doesn't mean we can G-chat each other back and forth. That doesn't mean we can text message each other back and forth, right? So that's another subtle thing that we don't realize how much of that steals our precious moments away from our day. It's the constant interruptions that distract us and take us away from what's important.
Absolutely. I have a distraction quiz on my website that people can find out whether they're a wizard, a squirrel, or a time zombie. And it's all about that, is just creating some heightened awareness as to all the things that are distracting us. So I agree with that. And those tools that we hold so preciously, those very often are the instruments that create the greatest distraction. So we really have to set rules and boundaries that you talked about around not just what blocks of time we have, but also how we use the tools that we have around us and those types of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. They can either be wonderful tools or they can be very terrible masters over our schedules.
So I'm just wondering, while we're mentioning tools, is there one tool that you had to delete? You got a new phone or you had to delete all the apps off your phone. What would be, other than email and your calendar, what would be the number one app or resource that you use that helps you really save the most time or use most?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you some wonderful new app or wizard thing that, everyone's going to be eager to hear about. But the reality is it's this paper planner pad that I use. This is the tool that helps me plan, helps me organize. I use a mixture of this along with Google Calendar. But for me personally, I love being able to touch, to interact with my calendar. Yes, there's a lot of duplication and effort, meaning what's on Google has to match what's in here and vice versa. But for me, being able to just very easily look at this, to be pencil in notes, to be able to just look forward, flip over a few pages and see easily what's next week look like. For me, the tactile experience of having something in paper is such a lifesaver for me.
I think you mentioned it earlier, and I just want to bring it back up because it's really important, is that different things work for different people. So for everyone who's listening, you mentioned that you looked at what worked for you and what didn't work for you. And I think that's the absolute key, is for everybody to get clear on what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So we can all think about a time when we were super productive. Well, what was present and what wasn't present? And that, just thinking about it in that way will already help us to see what are some of the things that we need to put in place that we might have forgotten or left out, right? What I've seen, and you tell me how the pandemic has changed your work, but what I saw is some of the things that worked for me in the past, I don't know why, but I stopped doing them. And of course, I have this sort of reflection review process where I was able to realize that pretty quickly and get back onto things. But I don't know why. That's what happened for me, is it kind of just shook me out of my normal routines and things that I use that I know work for me. Did you have anything like that happened for you when the pandemic came around?
Not for me personally, Penny. I am very much rigid with my schedule now, even though I'm when people hear that, they think, well, you must be detail oriented. You must love your schedule and all these things. The answer is no, I don't. It's against my quote unquote natural, normal tendency. But over the years, I have forced myself to understand the importance of being rigid with my schedule. And so for me personally, the thing that really helped me transition through the pandemic and all the uncertainty and leading a team through the pandemic and literally dozens and dozens of clients, maintaining those relationships, bringing those through the pandemic, was my morning routine and being steadfast and not changing my morning routine whatsoever. And so for me, the most important time of the day is before anyone else gets to work. It's before I leave the house in the morning. That is the most important thing. It forces me, or allows me, I guess, to do the most high priority work for myself, not for the company, not for the clients, but quote unquote me time, as the catchphrase is, I guess, would be today.
Yeah.
That's the time.
Absolutely. And you hear a lot of people talking about the benefits and the value of the morning routine. And I agree that the time before everybody gets up, especially before my kids get up, that's the time for me. And it's the things that are most important for me that I need to do during that time. I don't know about you, but I'm very even more so than what I do in the morning, I'm very clear about what I don't do. So are there certain things that you know, whether it's in the morning or any time that you've got these rules of don'ts?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's funny is one of those don'ts now is I don't check my email first thing in the morning. And for years and years, all the experts, you'll hear them say, don't check your email first in the morning. Don't get on social first thing in the morning. You know, it's just sends your mental state in the wrong direction.
Sure.
But because of the nature of our business and because we've been growing a lot over the last years, I kept justifying saying, but I need to be able to see if something came in over during the night that I really need to respond to. And so one of my don'ts now is just simply, I do not allow myself to check my email until 6 a.m. Now I get up at 5 every morning. So I have an hour of other time that I do reading, I do meditation, I do some journaling, all of that takes place. And then I can check my email right at 6 o'clock in the morning. And the other thing is I limit that time. The reason I limit that time is I don't necessarily have you can check your email for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but my time is limited because I know that by 6:20, I have to walk out the door to go run. Because if I don't walk out the door to go run, then I'm going to be late coming into the office. So the time limits, in other words, limiting those activities, are forced by the next appointment I have with myself. And I think that's a very important thing to learn, is that the appointments we have with ourselves are often the most important appointments we'll have all day.
I agree with you. And I would say that that's the hardest thing that people have is they tend to move and push off and eliminate the appointments that they have with themselves. So, you know, you have built up a lot of discipline over time to really follow that. What's a piece of advice that you have for someone that doesn't have that level of discipline and tends to cancel and move those appointments that are there for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say in looking back, so first of all, no, I'm not wired this way. It doesn't come natural to me. Really, I've been extremely intentional over the last 4 years. The last 4 years, I've been very intentional in building this morning routine. I've been very intentional about protecting my schedule. Am I perfect at it? No, absolutely not. There are days that I fall off the bandwagon, just like most people I'm sure do. But the three specific things that in looking back that I've done is, one, I decided in advance. So I decide in advance every single night. I decide in advance that I'm getting up at 5 o'clock. It's a new decision every single day. Now I get up at 7 days a week, and I've done it now for 4 years. So I decide each night in advance, though, tomorrow I'm getting up at 5 a.m. The next thing that I do is I make the decision for one day at a time. I don't make the decision to wake up at 5 a.m. for the next year. I make the decision to wake up at 5 a.m. for tomorrow, because I think often we scare ourselves psychologically. We scare ourselves by saying, I need to start getting up at 5 a.m. My life's going to be miserable trying to get up at 5 a.m. for the next year, right? But if we can just decide in advance and commit just for the next day, then it doesn't scare us so much. And then the final little piece is just this: just treat it as an experiment. Don't treat it as I'm doing this forever. Treat it as an experiment. Now, the one caveat around this experiment piece is this: when you start waking up earlier, or for me, I started running 4 years ago. When you start running, chances are you're going to hate it. You're going to hate it for quite some time, right? Getting up early is not fun, especially when you're used to sleeping in as late as possible. But treat it as an experiment. Give yourself, say, I'm going to try this for 30 days. That's the length of my experiment, is just a 30-day experiment. At the end of 30 days, if I don't like this, if I don't see some positive changes out of this, I can give up this experiment. So those would be the three specific things I would recommend for people.
Awesome. I love it. And just for those of you who are listening, I think those three things are great. I especially like that you're recommitting every day, right? So you can decide. And if you feel like sleeping in and you need to sleep in because you're sick or whatever, you decide that day. I really like that. And, a 30-day challenge, you could also make it a 7-day challenge. You got to just get started, right? I think that 30 days might scare some people too. So, so start with 5 days, 7 days, start with a small number. And I think what tends to happen is you see the benefits and then you keep doing it. And then if you just keep taking one day at a time after that, it's just before you know it, it's a year, it's 2 years, it's 4 years. So that's really great advice. So Wayne, we're coming to the end of our time. So I just want to ask you the question that I ask everyone, and then I'd like you to let people know where they can find you and a little bit more about your business. But first, the question. So what is your definition for productivity and why?
Sure. My definition of productivity is just simply achieving a desired outcome. And so when we think of high productivity, low productivity, we're achieving a certain outcome, right? It's how efficiently, how effectively are we achieving that thing? I'm reminded of the quote when I think of productivity. I don't remember if it was one of the Stoics. I don't remember if it's Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or one of those. But he had the saying that was basically, it's not that we have a short time to live, it's just that we squander so much of it. So when I think of productivity and I think about life as a whole, what are the desired outcomes that I'm after? What do I want my relationship with my kids to look like? What is that productivity? What does productivity look like in that area? My relationship with my wife, what does that look like? What is the desired outcome that I'm after, right? And then I can work backwards from there to determine the level of effort and energy I need to put into those things based on that specific outcome.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. So where can people find more information about you and what it is that you do?
Sure, absolutely. The simplest place, Penny, would just be to go to our website. That's just uglymugmarketing.com. On there's links to social media, my email address, our phone numbers, all that kind of stuff's all right there on the website.
And what do you guys do at Ugly Mug? Just give us a minute and tell us what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. We focus on 3 core areas. One would be website development. So we work with people building new websites. The second would be social media marketing. And then the third would be more traditional marketing, everything from radio, television, print, whatever it may be.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom that you've gained over the years and giving us that perspective from the creative perspective. I love it.
Thank you so much, Penny. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here, because these are tried and true type of strategies that are going to support you. So even, today, maybe there's something that you've heard before, but are you doing it is the question, right? And maybe there's a nugget that you didn't hear before that could be the difference that makes the difference. Just little tweaks sometimes is all that it takes. So what are you going to put into practice from today's show and take that 7-day challenge, that 30-day challenge, make it a challenge and implement something new that's going to work for you to help you to work smarter. My name's Penny Zanker, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.